Welcome to the live of this channel where we go a little bit more in depth in terms of actually studying and in terms of actually looking at the actual verses. Excuse me. It's probably because of there were like these big fires in Los Angeles, and if I turned my camera around, you'd see that the sky here in Santa Monica is still quite dark in terms of clouds from the fires. Anyway, as I said, we go deep into the actual verses of the famous book, the Bhagavad-Gita, spoken by Lord Krishna himself, which I quote all the time on this channel, and which I recommend you read, because the text itself says that when you read or when you hear the message of Krishna, you reconnect with him. And Krishna declares himself to be God or the absolute truth in this text. So when you hear the Bhagavad-Gita, this great, wonderful literature, you reawaken your dormant love for Krishna. Those who are just joining live here, thanks for being here with me. So on these lives, as I said, we actually look at the actual text of the Bhagavad-Gita. There's many different editions of the Bhagavad-Gita, and so here we are going through one particular edition which I helped translate into French, which was written by I think a wonderful person, His Holiness H.D Goswami, or Dr. Howard Resnick, who is a Ph.D. from Harvard University in Sanskrit and Indology, which he got faster than anyone in the history of the department of Harvard University. He's a direct disciple or initiated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose Bhagavad-Gita is by far the most widely read on the planet, and which, if you haven't read this person's Bhagavad-Gita or his translation and commentaries, namely the Bhagavad-Gita as it is, you can find it online for free. It's widely available. I highly recommend you do. But here on this live, we're going through Hridayananda Maharaj, as we call him, his Bhagavad-Gita study guide. And here we go. We're talking about the three modes of nature, one of the major themes of the Bhagavad-Gita, the three modes of nature, these three modes that influence everyone and everything in this world. And so if we're able to look at the world and our life in it through the lens of these three modes of nature, through this sort of tool that Krishna provides us, then we can actually make better choices in life, I believe. So let's read, and then when there's references to actual verses from the Bhagavad Gita, we'll go right there. So, part 3, nature's three modes. Let me see if I'm properly, yeah, you're seeing. Okay, cool. All right. So, Krishna defines the primary material elements, physical and cognitive, as his inferior nature, right? So here's a little footnote. The primary elements of nature are earth, water, air, gases, fire, ethers, mind, reason, and ego. So here Dr. Resnick is referring to a verse actually from the Gita. But here, let's go to 7.4. 7.4 is a very important verse, as all verses in the Bhagavad Gita are, but this is an especially famous verse because well, let's read it. 7.4. In chapter 7, verse 4, Krishna says, where are we? Here we are. Earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, reason, and egotism, this is my separated eightfold nature. Right? So according to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes this world as basically made up of earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, reason, and egotism. And that combination of these three, or these 8 things, or whatever, however, yeah, these 8 things are considered to be his separated nature. Separated, or an inferior nature, right? So according to the Bhagavad Gita, God has 2 basic categories of reality. One is the eternal spiritual reality. We are part of that reality as souls. God, of course, is the center of that reality. And then there's the material reality, the physical reality, the material world, where souls who are, who reject God are sent and are injected into this cycle of birth and death, the famous samsara concept, which Buddhists have, adopted or appropriated from the Sanatan Dharma traditions. So let's go back to the actual text. Let's go back to the original text here. How do we go back? It should be, here we go. Sorry, come on. There should be like a thing that says like go back. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry for the little... Yeah, there should have been a thing that says, hi, here we go. Back to 205. No. Okay, I'm sorry. We're going to quickly go back to page number 3. Here we go. All right. As clothes cover the body, these temporary physical and cognitive elements cover the eternal soul. Right? So in other words, we're souls and we're covered by these elements which constitute the bodies we're in. Here's a reference to verse 222. Let's go to it. In 222, Krishna says, famous verse about reincarnation, as one dons new clothes, discarding those that are worn, so the embodied soul, discarding worn bodies, dons new ones. In other words, that's reincarnation for us, right? As you put on and take off clothes, similarly, you as a soul, or we as souls, take off clothes, that's death, and put on new clothes, that's birth, right? Now, let's go back here. So, again, these cognitive and physical elements which make up our body are the inferior energy, but we as souls, we are actually Krishna's superior nature. We're God's superior spiritual nature. Remember, I mentioned that there's two things going on, the spiritual and the material world, and I said that we are part of the spiritual reality, right? Well, according to the Bhagavad-Gita, and right in that verse that we read, 7.4, in 7.5, Krishna says, okay, there's my inferior material energy, but there's the superior energy which constitutes you, my friend, like us. We're the souls. Here's Krishna's exact words. He says at 7.5, he says, know of my other superior nature that animates the world, the living being. The living being. Right? So we are those living beings. We are living beings. We are technically called jivas in Sanskrit language. And so according to 7.5 in the Bhagavad-Gita, according to the words of Krishna, we are God's superior nature. And we are the ones who are actually animating this dead material world. Right? So let's go back to the narration here. All material objects, whether bodies or planets, are ever in flux. Okay, we don't need to go to the actual verse here, 8.4, but we all know everything here comes and goes, right? All things must pass, as George Harrison, if you know George Harrison from the Beatles, he sang a song in his solo album called All Things Must Pass. So all material objects are ever in flux, endlessly transforming into different forms and qualities. Yet material nature, or material energy itself, the substance underlying nature's protean forms, is beginningless and permanent. Right? And here's a very important reference, 1320, but let's go to the footnote first. The footnote says, this notion of matter is somewhat analogous to Aristotle's substance. Interesting. And in 1320, Krishna says, know that nature and soul are actually both beginningless. Know too that transformations and modes arise from nature. So the idea is, you see, and this is where the Vaishnavas, or the devotees of God, the monotheists in the Sanatana Dharma traditions, distinguish themselves from the non-dualists, or what the devotees of Krishna call the Mayavadis. The typical, we're all one, we all have to merge with Brahman, we're all one, God is you, you are God, we are all God, there's no such thing as individuality, there's no such thing as relationships ultimately, you are Krishna, we are all one, blah, 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 right? And therefore, those who claim that will say that this material world is fully illusory, and hence this famous saying, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. This is a typical saying of the non-dualists or the Advaita Vedantists who will claim that, okay, Brahman, the spirit, which of course has no personality, no individuality, no free will, because we're all one, that Brahman is real, right? Brahman Satyam, Satya means real, but Jagat Mithya, this Jagat, this material world is Mithya. It's full on, it's illusory. It doesn't even exist. When you think about it, that's like such a depressing thing to say and to believe, because that means that any type of emotions, any type of relationships down here in this world, however sincere, however pure, are supposed to be illusory. So they don't count. They have no substance. They have no ontological existence. They don't exist. They're an illusion. How depressing. I would much rather believe, and this is exactly what Krishna teaches in the Gita, as we'll see in this verse, that this world is temporary, but it's not illusory. And what does that imply? That implies that while our exchanges among ourselves may right now not be totally pure and may be tinged by a lot of greed or selfishness or lust or exploitative tendencies, there's hope that by God's grace we can purify those relationships and end up actually having very pure relationships down here in this world, what to speak of in the spiritual world. So in other words, it's not a hopeless type of worldview as the non-dualists hold in terms of individuality and individual relationships, which they claim don't even exist, right? And so here's the verse in question. It's technical, but it's important. Krishna says, it's actually a super important verse. Know that nature and soul are actually both beginningless, you see. So Krishna is saying that, look, you as a soul, you're eternal, you're beginningless, okay? But even material nature itself, the nature itself is beginningless. It comes and goes. It's manifested, unmanifested. We have a body that lasts, 60 years, 80 years, it's going to die. Everything in this world comes and goes. Fine. But the actual stuff that this world is made of, material nature herself, is not illusory. It's not illusory. And therefore, what we do in this world actually counts. Relationships we have in this world actually count, And that's huge. That's huge. That's very, very, very huge. Okay, let's go back to Dr. Resnick's analysis. Importantly, material nature manifests with primary perceptible qualities. So here, finally, we're getting into this topic of the three gunas, and we might, continue. Obviously, we're going to continue tomorrow because we're at 13 minutes. And by the way, those of you who are live, the 4 of you, thank you for being here. This is my for me, it's a great privilege to be able to share this, and especially if there's someone live watching, it's a lot more enlivening, so thank you. So back to the text. Importantly, material nature manifests, bottom right. Importantly, material nature manifests with primary perceptible qualities. Okay, here we go. The Gita frequently uses the Sanskrit word guna to refer to nature's three basic qualities or modes. And here we go. Goodness, passion, and darkness. So those are the three famous gunas, the template or the lens through which to understand the world, which is given to us in the Bhagavad-Gita. And it's a wonderful, there's around the world you have different tools, conceptual tools to understand the world and our place in it, right? Well, the Bhagavad-Gita offers this amazing idea of these three modes, these three qualities. And so let's unpack them, or let Dr. Resnick unpack them here. All right. Indeed, the entire 14th chapter focuses on these material modes. And I highlighted this passage because I think it summarizes it really well. As human color vision is trichromatic, based on three primary colors, so worldly life Because, those three modes don't exist in the spiritual world. It's only in the physical realm that these modes exist. Because in the spiritual world, the only mode, quote unquote, that exists up there is pure sattva, or pure goodness, or 100% spirit, right? As human color, oops, what happened here? I'm sorry, once again, what happened here? As human color is trichromatic based on the three primary colors, so worldly life exists within a trimodal system of goodness, passion, and darkness. Just as we seldom find natural objects in pure primary colors, so the things of this world seldom embody pure primary modes. People and objects tend to show complex mixtures of the modes, right? So the idea, I'm sorry for saying right all the time. One of you pointed that out recently. Thank you. According to the Bhagavad-Gita, everything and everyone is influenced more or less by a combination of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we'll see what these three are. But to begin with, we have to understand nothing is black and white. It's not that something or someone is only influenced by goodness, or only influenced by passion, or only influenced by ignorance. A combination is more the right picture. Thus, a person has a good side, but also a passionate side, and even a dark side. The material modes permeate every object, emotion, act, and ambiance in this world, including food, faith, work, worship, charity, philosophy, bodies, and buildings. Indeed, every free choice we make is a modal choice, good, passionate, or dark, with infinite combinations. So these modes, they permeate everything and everyone down here. And the choices we make in life are very much influenced by one of or a combination of these three modes. And therefore, it's so important to know what these modes are, to see how they influence the world and influence us. And as we'll see, to try to always stay as much as possible under the influence of the winner of these three modes, the mode of goodness. And therefore, as apprentices, that's why, in the Krishna tradition, there's this stress on living, on basically following four rules, which, according to the Gita, according to the tradition, when followed, place us on a platform primarily of goodness. What I'm talking about is following these four moral rules of avoiding meat, of being plant-based in our diet, of avoiding sexual relationships outside of marriage, of avoiding drugs and alcohol, and of avoiding gambling. When one is able to follow these four basic moral rules, of the four regulative principles, as Prabhupada called them. Prabhupada called these four sort of lifestyle choices the four regulative principles. When one is able to avoid what's called illicit sex, as I just described, avoid gambling, avoid intoxication, and avoid meat eating, then just by doing that, without even chanting God's names, without even doing a puja or worshiping or praying or going to church or temple or to synagogue or to mosque or whatever, just by following these four sort of principles, according to the Bhagavad Gita, one is very much already situated in this sattva guna, in this mode of goodness. A very, very important point. So coming back to the text here, these material modes permeate every object, emotion, act, ambiance in this world, including food, faith, worship, etc. And I like this last sentence. This is really important for us. Indeed, every free choice we make is a modal choice, good, passionate, or dark. The decisions we make, the decisions we take in this world, again, are influenced. I mean, it really bears repeating. It really bears repeating, because if karma is real and if every action brings on a reaction, how careful we have to be in the decisions we make. Krishna declares that nothing on earth or among gods in heaven is free of nature's modes. Let's go to this verse, 1840. In 1840, Krishna himself, says, "There is no being on earth, nor yet among gods in heaven, who is free of these three nature-born modes." So in other words, we are really conditioned. The more we advance spiritually and the more we delve into the Bhagavad-Gita, the more we realize that while we have free will, and we always have free will, we realize just how much we're actually conditioned. We are so conditioned. But as Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, karma nivedikaraste mafali, nehami kramanashosi pratavi, what is it? Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate. The conditioned soul thinks himself or herself the doer of activities which are actually being enacted by the three modes of nature, but deluded by false ego, by this famous ahankara or ego. We think, oh yeah, I'm deciding to live here or there, or I'm deciding to marry this person or that person, or it's because of my own efforts, only in this life, for example, that I have this much money or that much money. Of course, we act in this world, and the intricacies of karma are difficult to exactly pinpoint. But the point is that we're very much influenced. And because of this illusory false ego, we do have an original spiritual ego. But because of this material ego, we think, we're in control of a lot more than we actually are not. So it's amazing that Krishna says there is no being on earth, nor yet among gods in heaven, who is free of these three nature-born modes. So we'll continue tomorrow on what those modes actually are. And until then, my friends, I thank you very much for being live with me here. And I wish you a great day or a great evening wherever you are. And let's continue to stay as much as possible in this mode of goodness, which basically means following these 4 rules, staying clean, waking up in the morning early, etc., accompanied by this positive practice of chanting Krishna's names, of hearing the Bhagavad Gita as we're doing right now. And until then, take care. Thank you very much.